What's going on? What's going on? I am Trans Gamer Live, and you are here. This is I kept on saying this, and believe me, whenever I say this, we was gonna get this interview, um, but it's with one of my favorite people in the world, Howard Stern, and he interviewed President Joe Biden, and basically this happened to be a really good interview from what I saw of it. I wanted to bring it to y'all, uh, and I have my own questions, but also a lot of questions got answered. So let's go ahead and get into it. Definitely one really good interview. Let's go.
Sitting and listening to Bruce Springsteen. I am live. I know typically on a Friday I am not live, but I decided to break into my own.
Definitely one of the things is with Howard Stern, he works Monday through Thursday. Like, I know it's 4 a.m. to, I want to say 8 my time. No, 6 to 10 my time. That's the way his XM works over here. But yeah, he's super early in the mornings. One of the best radio hosts ever. Him, Robin, Benji, all of them. Bubba Booey. Yeah, definitely love Howard Stern.
Channel because I'm sitting here with a phenomenal guest, somebody I wanted to meet for the longest time, and somebody I'm an admirer of, and somebody I adore. And it is not someone doing an impression. It is the real President of the United States of America, President Joe Biden. And welcome.
I think I should leave now.
Yeah, it's a pretty good introduction. I know everyone's going to think I'm doing a fake interview with you, but yet you are really here. And
happy to be here.
And I played Bruce Springsteen because he did this at your inauguration.
Yep.
I figured that'd be a good way to start things off.
It is. I like him.
Yeah, no, he's terrific. And I know he's a big fan of yours, too. By the
For 81, 82 years old, President Biden really looks really good for that age. I mean, and as you can tell, you'll see later on in this interview, the guy is still sharp. The guy really is still sharp. And I'm not a Democrat or a Republican because I have my own bouts with each of them. But definitely there's a lot more that could be said. Whether he could say it on record or whether he couldn't is either here nor there. But he does look and sound sharp, especially this early in the morning. So let's go ahead and get on. And by the way, this has got commercials in it because I'm too cheap to get. I'm too cheap to get like the YouTube Plus.
By the way, but as we start, I have to compliment you on something. Yesterday, you did something so great, and I don't know how many people are aware of it, but you got this thing with the airline passed that now when an airline, for some reason, screws you up and doesn't let you, whether you can't make the flight, they used to give you a credit, but now they are forced to refund you. And I think that's a huge deal.
Well, there's a lot of those, Howard. The fact is that when you're raised and you come up in a middle-class family,
not only that, they have to give you up to 4 times the amount of your ticket. If it's if you have a round trip, they have to give you 4 times the amount. That's one of the things.
All this stuff matters to you. It matters to those little items that they say, well, it only costs this, only costs that.
Yeah.
It matters. And so there's a lot of junk fees too. Like, for example, banks can't charge you $35 for overdrafts anymore. They'll cost you $3 or $8. I mean, whole range of things that matter. My dad used to say at the end of the month is how much you got left. How
Yeah.
much you got left.
Right. Speaking of your dad, you mind if I take you back in
No,
time?
whatever you want to ask. Talk
Okay,
about it.
because this is thrilling for me, and I'm just really excited you're here. My nerves have to. I'm really nervous, and I've been
Oh.
doing this forever. I'm nervous, man. I really am. But going back to your father, was your father a political guy, or your mother? Was it a political family?
And one thing I can say is that from what I understood from older shows of Howard Stern's, and also shows that um that basically portrayed Howard's father. Howard's father was in radio too. And Howard got told at an early age they would never amount to anything on radio, and look how big this guy is. This guy is absolutely massive. He's one of those, let's say it like this, there's like 4 or 5 people that are made in each industry. You know, like in the music industry, um you have Elton John, you have uh all of these others, Billy Joel, George Strait, Garth Brooks. You have all these massive people. He's one of them that's in radio. Whenever Howard Stern talks or asks something of you, you listen. You do it. Because that person can make or break you. And if he doesn't like what you're saying, guess what? It's it's over with. So yeah, it's one of those that it's absolutely awesome to. I've called into the show and won money from the show. It's absolutely awesome.
No, they weren't political. They were engaged, and they voted all the time. And they look. Well, my mom and dad were. They were people who were just typical middle class people with values mattered a lot to them. I mean, it was constantly banged in our heads. Like my dad, I have it on my desk. You got to come to my Oval Office and see it. I was complaining one day. I was showing my dad came over to do a fundraiser at my house. I had been a senator a long time. He was going to be there with me. We're standing out in the back overlooking this little pond. And I said, I sure wish my deceased wife could see this. She liked the upstate New York. And my dad said, I'll be back in a minute. He went up to the local Hallmark store, and he came back with a framed photograph of Hagar the Horrible with 2 seams in it. Hagar's boat is struck by lightning and it's going down. And he has his hand up in the sky and said, why me, God? And the next line is, why not? My dad said, what makes you special? It's going to happen to you too.
Wow.
That was my dad. You never complain, you never explain.
See, the reason I think everyone I know who knows you says one thing about the president. He is a compassionate guy, and I feel like your father was really behind you and really on your team. And what was striking to me about your father is before you were born, your father had money.
Yes.
He had means. He was doing well in life.
Yep.
And then he lost everything.
Yep.
And in your life, you've been surrounded by so much loss. I said, if I ever get to meet you, I want to ask you about this. And this is the theme: how you deal with loss. But even you were born, you had a father who had to be depressed in some way because he had affluence, and he lost it all. Did that affect your early life?
No, because my dad, there used to be a joke in the family. My dad would get up and he'd always be whistling in the morning. My dad was one of these guys that said, tomorrow's going to be better. I mean, for real. My dad was a guy who, the one thing my dad cared most about was dignity, treat people with dignity, and being treated with dignity. And my dad used to have an expression. He'd say, you know, Joey, your job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being treated with respect. And to my dad, but I always admired my dad because he did have a lot. There's a famous phrase in the family when my dad really wants to, when my mom would really get mad at my dad, the greatest swipe she'd take at him. He said when this particular guy they started a business, they were doing well. My dad was out selling, came back, turned out the guy had big gambling debts, and he lost everything. That's how everything got lost.
What was he selling?
He had a furniture company.
Okay.
And so anyway, what happened was when the police came to him and said, you know, you can bring charges, he said, I can't do that. I'm godfather to his daughter.
Wow.
So every time my mother would get friends, my dad wouldn't strike back at someone. He said, I know, you're godfather to his daughter. That was
So you feel like you were
Definitely something that, yeah, it could take a toll on a person. But also with something like that, it's one of those things where being nice to a person can also affect your mental state, your mental ability. Uh, and I see it a lot with me because I try to be nice to everybody, but it can affect your mental ability. You spread kindness like a wildfire, and kindness is going to come back to you. You spread hatred like a wildfire, and then whenever you least expect it, hate's going to come back on you. So yes, that's the reason why I'm always kind. I'm always, yes, I can get toxic sometimes, but then I mean my toxicity is like jelly compared to like some of these toxic people. But definitely, spread kindness to everybody because kindness also includes respect and everything else, and you'll get it back tenfold.
emotionally fed by your father. In other words, he was a man, he was relatable, you could go to him with a problem.
Well, it's interesting. My dad was old fashioned in the sense that my dad wasn't the guy. I don't ever remember I knew he adored me, but I never heard my dad wasn't, I love you, because it was a generational thing. You know, men didn't say that then, but my dad would put his arm around me. My dad would come to the games, you know. But for example, I remember starting off playing Catholic League football, CAA football.
By the way, I don't think a lot of people know that you were a star receiver in high school. A
In high
star
school,
receiver. You were like the first string guy. You were the guy who caught the ball.
runner up in state, scoring. You know what the
Wow.
but I was a runt anyway. Well, my dad. I remember getting knocked out when I was in fourth grade playing.
Concussion?
Well, I guess it was, but we didn't. It was just knocked out.
Right.
And my dad walked out in the field and said, Joey, get up. Just get up, man. You got to get up. Get up. If I could explain my dad, it's just never give up. Just get up. Just get up. My dad was always positive. My mother was one of those who was, she'd say, you know, Joey, as long as you're, there's an actual quote she'd use more than once. As long as you're alive, Joey, you have an obligation to strive. You're not dead till you've seen the face of God, Joey. Get up. Get up.
What I like about your mother is, and tell me if this story is true.
Never say quit parents. Love that actually. You know, it outbeats a lot of the parents that are out there today that are, I grew up with those type parents that my grandparents became my parents because I was up for adoption. Not many people know this, but basically your dreams are out there. Yeah, I had plenty of dreams. I really wanted to play football, but I couldn't do that. And by the time that I wanted to go into racing and stuff like that. My mother and father did not have the money to put me through and start doing racing and stuff like that. I've done a little bit, since I've been out of high school and college and stuff like that, but uh I don't think that the NASCAR dream's gonna come true. So I mean, hey, like, subscribe, follow right here because you'll get the best content, baby.
That it's famous now that you were a stutterer as a
Yes.
boy. You suffered from a horrible stutter, and there was a nun who decided to really goof on you and screw with you, and your mother marched down there and said to that nun, "I'm going to rip the habit off your head if you sit there and make fun of my son." Wow, is it true?
Well, it is true. We, it's probably the best thing ever happened to me. I'm not joking.
I do the same thing. I don't care who it is. Somebody messes with my child, whether it's mocking them or whatever. Somebody messes with my child. Guess what? I don't care who you are. The fighting side's going to come out in me. You ain't going to like it. But also, on that same aspect, too, I'm not going to sit here and lie. If they mess up, guess what? Spare a rod, spoil the child. Bust their butt and get it over with. Because I'm going to treat them just like my parents taught me. Because what you got at school, you also got at home.
Was I stuttered, and because I learned, we have a rule in our family, and my mom's family as well, my dad, that
There's lots of rules in President Biden's family. Here's rule number 2.
you can never make, no matter what a jerk someone else is, you can never say anything about them that's true. If they're fat and ugly, you couldn't say you're fat. You could say you're stupid in a fight. If they were whatever it was, and my mom.
Why didn't you do this to your opponent 4 years ago? You didn't call him fat and stupid. Well, okay, never mind.
Was one of these people who, she said when I stutter, I used to talk a little like that.
It was that bad.
It was that bad.
Oh God.
But only
That's a bad stutter.
I'm not with my friends. With my friends, I occasionally stutter, but when I had to read in school, when I had to do things like that, and a particular nun and the nuns were great. I had them for 8 years, but this one nun I was reading, you read an
Nuns are great, especially at Halloween.
alphabetical order, and I knew my part was coming up, and so when one thing led to another, and I used to memorize the lines I was going to have to read because it's easier than look at the paper.
Yeah.
And I said, and Sir Walter Raleigh was a gentle man, and the nun said, "What's
Hold up. It's not Raleigh. It's Riley. Sir Walter Riley.
that word, Master Biden?" I said, "Gentleman." She said, "Mr. Biden."
Oh,
And I got up and walked out of class.
really?
You don't do that.
Yeah.
And I went home, and my mother said, she was tapping her fingers on the kitchen table. She get in the car with my younger brother, drives me back. I remember walking in. There was a little anteroom to the nun's office, and she had me sit down and hold my brother. Anyway, I could hear the door was cracked, and said, "What happened, sister?" And to the mother superior, she said, "Well, it doesn't matter. He just was so rude. He walked out of class. He can't do that." The next thing you know, he said, can you bring the sister? I'm not going to mention her name. Can you bring sister down? Brought her down. I could see there was a crack in the door. And I could see the profile of my mom, who was 5'1", about 108, 102 pounds or something. And, and she said, "What happened?" He said, and the nun said what happened. He said, did you say Mr. Biden? So I was just making a point, Mrs. Biden. I said, "If you ever speak to my son like that, I'm going to come back and rip that damn bonnet off your head. Do you understand me?
Wow.
Do you understand?" She gets up and, "Joey, let's go. No more screwing around."
Well, the fact that you had the balls to walk out of a classroom, it says something about you too. Like, you know what? You set some boundaries. Hey, you're going to sit
Well,
there and goof on me. I'm out of here. I don't know
well,
that I would have had the.
See, no kid needs to have that happen to them in school. I mean, I had a, I still have it today. I have dyslexia. I mean, I didn't have a stutter or anything else, but I mean, no one, no one deserves anything like that. That all goes back to what I was saying about being kind to people versus being hated to people. Having that hatred towards people, because if you have that hatred towards people, then guess what? It's all going to come back to you tenfold. If you are nice to the person, it's going to come back to you tenfold.
You know, I don't know that I would have been able to do something like that, honestly.
well, I don't know about that, but it just, but it taught me a lot. And like I said, no one in my family, we were never, no matter what a jerk somebody was, you could never say something about that was true that they couldn't control.
Yeah, your family is pretty. Again, this goes to my point about, the president is the father of our country. That's something we all say. And I think your family is so extraordinary because of the way they've conducted themselves and how they are with you that I feel you have.
If you look down on, well, I know you can't see this, but if you go to the original video, and I will have it linked down below, if you go to that, you can actually see the run sheet that Howard has, and there's like multiple. This is an hour and 13-minute video, uh, or interview, and you can see, questions that are asked. There's a store back behind one of them and stuff like that. It's absolutely awesome. This is something that I've implemented whenever I do interviews. I not only send, after I get the okay to do the video or do the interview with the person, I'll also send them questions and stuff like that. So this is absolutely phenomenal that that it's being it's being this way.
Have a lot to give to the presidency. These are my feelings because, you know, I'm thinking about this. It's a horrible point in your life, but again, we're talking about loss. When you were in college, you met your first wife,
Yep.
right? Fabulous woman. She was
First
wasn't
wife?
she the prom queen or
Yeah,
the
she was in
homecoming queen?
Syracuse. Yeah,
You met this beautiful woman.
I did.
I mean, and you asked her out, and she agrees to go out with you, and she was it was by all accounts a fabulous marriage and a fabulous kind of
It
life. You,
was.
you were a new. What were you just? You would just run for Senate, and well,
No,
you
I
were
hadn't
on the
run yet. No,
county council.
I hadn't even done that yet.
Yeah.
I was just out of law school.
By the way, before we get to your first wife, when you get out of law school, you get some kind of job working for the local Republicans. They were.
Well, when I got a job, with one of the best, the most prestigious plaintiffs firms in the state. And but Dr. King was killed that year, and we were the only city in America occupied by the National Guard for 10 months with drawn bayonets on
Yeah.
every corner. And so I quit and became a public defender.
That's what I want.
Okay. FYI, because I know that we have people that are not they're new to all of this. A bayonet is a knife that is on the end of a gun. Just letting you know That way, uh, knowledge is power. Power is knowledge. Ooh, oops. I think this is
In
right.
college, you met your first wife,
Yeah, right here.
Yep.
right? Fabulous woman. She
A
was
bayonet
wasn't she
is
the prom queen or
Yeah,
the
she was
one on the
homecoming queen?
Syracuse.
a
Yeah,
knife on the
You
end
met
of
this
a gun.
beautiful woman.
did.
I mean, and you asked her out, and she agrees to go out with you, and she was it was by all accounts a fabulous marriage and a fabulous kind of
It
life.
was.
You were a new. What were you just? You would just run for Senate, and well,
No, I
you were
hadn't
on the
run yet. No,
county council.
I hadn't even done that yet.
Yeah.
I was just out of law school.
By the way, before we get to your first wife, when you get out of law school, you get some kind of job working for the local Republicans. They were
Well, when I got a job, with one of the best, the most prestigious plaintiffs firms in the state. And but Dr. King was killed that summer, that year, and we were the only city in America occupied by the National Guard for 10 months with drawn bayonets on
Yeah.
every corner. And so I quit and became a public defender.
That's what I want to ask you about. So you're working at some law firm and you realize you're representing big corporations and stuff, guys who, probably, you don't identify with. You quit, you go across the street and become a public defender. And you're defending poor families who can't afford a good lawyer. That's pretty noble.
Well, I didn't think it was being noble. I thought of it as being the way to fight back against what was happening to a lot of, particularly, we have the eighth largest black population as a percent of population in the country. And we were segregated by law for a long time. We were one of those slave states, literally, that fought on the side of the North. And there was a big debate as to whether or not the Democratic Party was part of the mainstream Northeastern Democratic Party or more of a Southern Democratic Party. So I became a public defender and went to work with a group of senior guys who were much my senior, called the New Democratic Coalition, to try to reform the Democratic Party. That's how I got engaged in that.
Was there some part of you that said, geez, I went to law school. I should be making a lot of money. When you decide to become a public defender, it's a noble thing.
Well, no, I never thought of it that way. For some reason, I never thought that being a lawyer I was going to make a lot of money. I thought being a lawyer, I could do some good things.
See, that's what today's lawyers don't get. It's more of a, they're almost political to a point. I mean, because you look at, hey, look, I'm touching Biden's face. Kiss my arm. But it's almost political to a point that these lawyers don't care. There's some of them that have a heart, but not most of them, because they want to get paid. They want to get that money. They want to be the next millionaire and then be out by the age of 50. Then you got some of these that are like, okay, well, yeah, let's go in and help the little person out. And I think that's so awesome for a person to do, because with the way that things are going, whether you are trying to get divorced or whether you're trying to do this, trying to do that, there is nothing in this world now that you can have one job being, get that one job, pay your rent, pay everything off of one income. And I've had to live with other people and everything else. In fact, I'm living with a friend right now. uh, and probably still will continue to live with friends until A, Hollywood picks me up, or B, I make so much money off of YouTube will start paying me a residual on everything that I do. But I mean, there's no one income households now. It's a multiple income household, and it's really bad on the public. We need to adjust everything. This 1940s style, way of doing stuff is not working nowadays. This is 2024. We need to change.
Representing people not as a public defender, but as a lawyer when they're injured, or as a lawyer that they. So it wasn't so much that. I can't say I went in thinking I was going to make a lot of money. But and switching to the public defender side, granted, I made a little less money, but it wasn't so much that. It was I really felt strongly about having to change the environment in the state, and it was a way to get engaged in changing the political environment.
Did you, at that point in your life, do you go to court and you stand up and argue in front of a
Yes,
judge?
yeah.
No kidding. What were some of the cases like? I mean, these are people who are accused of horrendous crimes, of heinous crimes.
Well, some were a couple. I mean, I've had a couple murder cases, those things, but a lot of them were cases where they were they were accused of things that that weren't. I didn't think rose to the level of being a crime that they intentionally committed.
Right.
And so, but it was all over the board. You didn't get to choose what case you got. I mean, people came in and they had everything from murder to burglary to assault, those kinds of things.
What?
See, here's the thing about the whole public defender or lawyers situation. If I knew that a person was guilty, there's no way, no way that I could just sit there and prove that they're not. I would hand it over like right then and there. No fights about it and everything. Now, if there was okay, it was done this way, I would try to get it for that. But like, if I knew that the person was guilty that I was over, no, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
What a pressure, right? I mean, somebody's life is in your hands. You talk about the presidency being a pressure, or being a senator,
Well,
or
that's
vice.
well, that's true. That part, I think every defense attorney feels that way. If you're on that side of the aisle, it's you just and a number of these people, some were guilty. It turns out,
Right.
but some were totally innocent, and those are the cases you just wonder, how in God's name do I tell the husband, the wife, the son, the daughter that they've been found guilty?
Did you hate law school? Was it? I mean, was law?
No,
The compression on, oh my God. This is one of the reasons why I listen to Howard Stern. The compression and the way that Howard's mic is set up is just phenomenal. It's very clear, very sharp. The compression is just out of this world. And look how small the mic is. Now, if I was to put my mic up here, you see how big it is. I mean, and this is only maybe a foot in front of me. But yeah, I mean, you look at that away, and look how much compression that mic is putting out. Absolutely
Was law a
No,
phenomenal.
passion of yours, or were you?
no, it wasn't. Look, I was a jerk in law school. What happened was I got an opportunity to go to some more prestigious law schools, and but didn't have the money to get there. So
You were at Syracuse,
I was a it's a good law school,
right?
but I thought I was going to go to either excuse me, Cornell or no, anyway.
But why were you a jerk in law school?
Well, I didn't take it seriously enough. For example, I didn't buy my textbooks until middle of the first semester.
That's a good move.
There's this thing. I shouldn't say this, but it was embarrassing. But there was a guy named Bob Osgood who graduated at #1 in our class and became a senior partner in one of the major law firms in New York. And you get called on. We had a very tough professor, a good professor, great professor, taught torts. And you get called on in class, you stand up and recite what the case is about. And so I hadn't read the case. And so he called on me and I stood up and I went through this whole thing. And as if I had read the case, just, you know. And Bob Osgood stands up and starts to clap the whole and the professor looked at me and said, Mr. Biden, that's incredible. It had nothing to do with the case, but if you ever learn to read a case, you're going to be okay.
Wow, what a distinguished law school
Oh,
event! Yeah,
God.
yeah.
I
But
was embarrassed.
so when you're in law school, this is when you went to the Bahamas on spring break and met your
Yes.
first wife?
Yeah, well, yeah. And actually, I wasn't in law school, I was in college. And I was a senior, I was a junior in college. I got my $85 tax return. And with a bunch of guys, we got in a car and we went down to Fort Lauderdale.
Oh,
$85 tax return. That was the creme de la creme. Because I want to say at that time, you wasn't going to get anything above that. I mean, now we have people that have anywhere from uh 800 to, let's say, 9,000 come back in depending on how many kids you got.
Fort Lauderdale. Okay.
And I'm the only Irishman you ever met that's never had a drink in his life. And all anybody did was they were just
Bullshit. You never had a drink in your life, man. You need to have a drink.
drinking and drunk. And so I found out you could go to Nassau for $20 round trip. And I'd never been on a commercial airline.
Yeah.
So I convinced two of my buddies to go on a commercial airline to go to Nassau.
And by the way, remember those days too? It was like, I remember the first time I went on one, you got dressed up to go on an airplane.
Yeah,
It was
that's
like a
right.
big deal.
That's
Yeah, right.
And to make a long story short,
Everybody look like mobsters up there. You came in with the sleazy outfit. We're gonna boot you out.
we thought there'd be less just dancing and drinking. And not that these guys opposed it, but there'd be college girls there. And it turns out we go to the beach and they're all locals and there's nobody there.
The college girls. Everybody still looks at them today, whether you're 18 or 99. Everybody looks at them.
All the hotels had at the time, the British Colonial Hotel had a chain link fence that ran down the length of the property out into the ocean.
Huh.
And so what we did, there was nobody there, so we grabbed towels off the chain link fence that had British Colonial on it, three of us, and we walked and we just walked right out to the pool like we were there.
Huh.
And there was this young woman who was particularly attractive, I thought. I said, I'm going to go talk to her. And this other guy, Mike, said, no, I'm going. And the third guy flipped a coin, I won.
Wow.
And then we went and sat down, and I'm talking to
Jill. He's talking to Jill.
Would you have honored that if when you flipped the coin, if the other guy won?
No, that was the deal.
That was the deal.
That was the
I
deal.
mean-
And so anyway, to make a long story short, I'm sitting talking. I
President Biden, man of his word.
said, hi, my name's Joe Biden. I'm from Delaware. She said, my name's Nelia Hunter. I'm from Syracuse. And I started talking to her, and she's lying on the chaise lounge. I'm at the foot, and I'm looking out at the ocean because the sun was coming toward the shore, toward the ocean. And I see this guy, I'm watching, talking to her, and I'm watching this yacht pull up. The guy gets out with that, the hat and the white pants, and he gets in a dinghy and he rows ashore. And I'm just,
There's a Bible song about this somewhere. Bible song.
curious watching him. And he walks right up to Nelia, where I'm sitting by the pool. He said, "Nelia, we on for dinner tonight?" She said, "Oh, I'm sorry, John." She said, "Joe and I are going to dinner. I apologize." He huffed off. She said, "I'm so embarrassed. I didn't mean, I just didn't want to do." I said, "Why don't we go to dinner?" I had $22 left, I think it was. So we go to this place to dinner, and you can
$22. That is, if you don't order DoorDash, that is 2 hamburgers at Whataburger. What a burger. There you go. What a burger. Oh Lord. What a burger. You need to sponsor this.
buy McDonald's hamburgers for 19 cents in those days. So
No, nobody likes McDonald's. Well, I do too. I mean, McDonald's, it's according to where you get them to whether they're good.
at this nice restaurant, I order a hamburger, and her family had money,
Right.
but she ordered the same thing. She was very gracious. And the bill comes, and I was $20 short, and I could feel a tap under the table on my knee. And I put my hand down, she put $40 in my hand.
Oh my God.
And she said, I said, "I'm so embarrassed." She said, "Oh, it happens to my dad all the time." It never does.
Oh, you had to fall in love right in that moment.
By the way, I did. And
If a woman puts $40 in your hand, it's automatically falling in love because, I mean, just take it. Take it.
walking her back, I never kissed her, never went in a room, never went to bed with her.
Never rented a room or never went to bed with her. President Biden, I am ashamed. I am ashamed. Because he was wanting it.
And I'm like a horse's tail. There's, how there are those chains that separate parking lots from
Yeah.
the walkways.
Yeah.
Horse's tail. Gotta get hip with it, Biden. Gotta get hip with it. You gotta get lit. That's not a horse's tail. That's a jackass.
I go to jump over, I trip, fall flat in my ass. And she
I'm telling the Secret Service you cussed and you're laughing about it.
said, "Oh, that's okay. It's I." And I said, I got up, and it was a stupid thing to say. I said, "I think I'm going to marry you." And she looked at me, my word is Biden. She said, "I think maybe." I quit the football.
You tripped, fell, landed on your butt. The next word you say is, "Hey, I think I'm going to marry you." A girl nowadays, you're a creep.
Football team and started to commute every single weekend up to Syracuse, New York, which I did for the next so many years.
You played football for Syracuse too after high school?
No. This isn't at Delaware.
Oh, okay, Delaware.
Delaware.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
had been a freshman. My grades were terrible. My mother made me quit. My grades came back up. I went back out my junior year in spring practice, and I was designated, they thought I might be the safety, and I'd make the team.
Is there like a mysterious mic holder like up there, like this? Or is it natural? Let me see if I can do it. Like, oh, it's pretty natural. Pretty natural. You don't feel your arm after a while. Just saying.
But I quit. I didn't go back because I just fell ass over tin cups in love with her.
Wow. Unbelievable. Like that.
Rigor mortis just set in and broke.
It's a
That
true story.
it's a crazy story, you know? And I mean, the fact that, like, a lot of guys would have said, "You know what? I think you're gonna be my wife," and, like, she might have head for the hills, you know what I mean? Like, said, "This guy's crazy. He's, like, oh, he's in love."
At least Howard Stern gets what I'm talking about, because it's like you fall on your butt, and then it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna marry you. Kind of person says that type of stuff? I mean, I don't know how it was back then, but if I said that whenever I was in high school or whenever I was in college, I would have got out a little bit quicker than the average bear there. I get it said all the time now, but I mean, I'm a cat. Not really. By the way, guys, I'm joking around. I'm trying to make light of this interview, so please don't go hard on me and the I said hard on. Damn. Uh don't make it like really bad in the comments section, because I'm just making fun. I love I love doing reaction videos, and sometimes I make fun, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's serious, and then sometimes I just gotta let loose. This is an hour and 13 minutes. There's gonna be sometimes that is gonna be informational, and sometimes I'm just gonna try to have fun, and this is one of them.
Already, and he thinks you're gonna.
No, no man deserves one great love, let alone two. I mean, I really did. I mean, it was true. It's like when I met.
In some parts of the country, 10, 12, 15. If you're poly, infinity.
When I met Jill, I was when I lost my family.
Jill!
I got put in that 10 most eligible bachelors list.
'Cause you were a United States
I was
senator, you
a
were a
senator,
catch, yeah,
and so
yeah.
and a lot of lovely women, but women would send very salacious pictures, and I just give them to the Secret Service. I thought somebody would think I was, and I just gave up. And I got a call from my brother. He said, "I know a girl here at Delaware. Jill's 9 years younger than I am." She said, "And you."
It's something that I've never understood, because probably I've never had that type of dynamic in dating. Is somebody that is either younger or older. The dynamic either is younger or older. I've always dated somewhat close to my age. Maybe I'll see if I can find something out. Maybe a new dynamic that I can just spice up.
You'll love her. She doesn't like politics.
Well, that's my point about your family, and this is what I love about your family. Your brother Frank is your youngest brother. He's the one who introduces you to your second wife, Jill. When you lost your wife, now listen, what did you date for 2 years after you met in the Bahamas, and then you got married, right?
Right.
It was a great romance, and you had 3 children. You had a daughter and 2 sons, and you had a young family. You had just been elected to the United States Senate, and the worst thing ever happens in your life. It's a horrible tragedy. Your wife was in a car accident, some truck hit her, and you lost your 13-month-old daughter. And I get the chills when I say it, because I can't imagine this kind of loss. You lose your 13-month-old daughter, you lose your wife, and your 2 boys end up in the hospital.
Yes.
I I can't even imagine that kind of loss. Here's the love of your life. You have this beautiful romance, love at first sight, I would say. I don't know how you recover from something like that. I just don't know.
Family. Look,
You can hear the emotion that is on Howard's whenever Howard speaks about losing the 13 month old baby girl, is because he has he has children of his own. I want to say he's got children on his own. But I mean, nobody can fathom trying or nobody can fathom having loss like that. Not at that young of age. But yeah.
I spend a lot of time because anyway, when you've been through something tough and everybody had in their life and people know it and you survive it, people come to you and ask basically how. They want to reassure you. And so one of the things I had.
It's almost like a guru situation. It's like you go through a traumatic experience because uh just like okay, just like with me, I went through losing my father at first and well no, it was losing my brother and my grandfather in the same week, not even 5 days apart from each other in 97. Then turn around in 2000, losing my dad. Then, and I mean, and there's been, you know, relatives here and there and everywhere that was sprinkled all the way through. And then losing my grandmother in 14. Yeah, it kind of was really bad. Um, this month, May, and I'm just now thinking about this. This month, like I said, this month is May, and it's May the 11th right now. I think my grandmother's birthday was like May the 12th. So it's really, really close, and it's been 10 years since she passed. Yeah, it's bad.
I had my mother and my father, my best friend in the world is my sister, my younger sister, my brother Jimmy, Frankie, the whole family, and everybody just, for example, what I would do, I didn't want to stay in the U.S. Senate, and I let everybody know I was going to have. We had a Democratic governor, and he'd appoint a successor, and another Democrat, and Senator Mansfield, Iron Mike from Montana, a man more integrity in his little finger than most people have in their whole body. And Teddy Kennedy and a guy named Fritz Hollings from South Carolina and Tom Eagleton and a few others, they all came to me and said, look, just stay 6 months. Help us organize. Like a damn fool, I thought that. I said, okay, but I'm not going to stay. And I started commuting back and forth in a train to Delaware, 300 miles round trip a day. And
The reason you were commuting is you wanted to be near your two boys because they'd lost their mother, they lost their
Teddy Kennedy. I know I said that wrong. That's more Franklin D. Roosevelt, or Theodore Roosevelt, esque. But the Kennedys had a really big pull. In fact, they still do within, um, within the Congress and also the Senate and stuff like that on a national level. Um, but yes, it's one of those things where um they ask you to stay. You're there for a couple weeks, you think. Turns into years. Then you're spending more than 47 years within one place, and you should have only stayed 20.
sister, you needed to be involved. So you would get on the Amtrak. They called you Amtrak Joe, right?
yeah,
And you would commute to DC and do your job.
right.
Okay, There used to be a thing with presidents and, Congress taking over the rail systems. It was one of those things where, like Bush 41, and stuff like that, all the way back to the beginning of the rail system, they could stop in rail towns. That's the reason why you have like a big hub in Chicago, a big hub in all these big cities and stuff like that, is because they can stop that train, they can open up the doors on either the back of the train or the back or on one of the cars, have a stage that they pull up right beside, stop the train, he can get out, speak, go back in the train, they pull off, and they're on to the next station or the next town to do a speech. But with this, they've done. Biden was already in at that point in time, and to get back and forth, he had to make a 300-mile round trip to where he could stay by his family, but also be in the Senate.
And go home. But the reason real reason, there was no way. And that's why I'm so empathetic to people who need child care. I could not afford child care even if I did move to Delaware from Delaware. I was listed for 36 years as the poorest man in the United States Congress.
Right.
I never thought I was poor. I was getting a Senate salary, which was more than I'd ever made.
Yeah.
But the end result was that my family was home. So, for example, when the boys were really little, I'd go from my house, which is not far from where my parents lived. I'd be driven by my buddy Tommy Lewis, who worked for me. He'd drive me in, we'd drop at my mom, like the kids at my mom's, and then I'd go on to the train station. So I had a whole network to take care of my family.
But that's my point. What a family. Valerie, your sister, moves in basically to help you. Think about it. This wasn't her burden, but she moved in.
She and her husband gave up their place when I came home from, the boys were hospitalized. When I came home from the hospital, they had moved in.
I mean, what a gift. And your brother, Jimmy, moves into the garage.
Exactly right. He made it a little apartment. Look, we have an expression in our family, for real. If you have to.
Here's another rule. It's not an expression. It's a rule. If you have to ask, it's too late.
Ask, it's too late. If you have to ask, it's too late.
But most families aren't like this. They are not. Valerie put her whole life on hold in order to help you raise your boys. And Jimmy moves into a garage and puts his life on hold because they love you. That is the most loving. If I wrote a movie, you would say, that's a little over the top.
Well, it's who.
If Howard was writing a movie, there's butt cheeks going to be in it.
We are. I mean, it's how we were raised.
The amount of gratitude. And here's another thing I like about you. So you become Amtrak Joe. By the way, you were one of the youngest senators. You couldn't even get sworn in. Your wife never got to see you sworn in because you were
That's correct.
Technically 28 years old and you have to be
30.
You have to be 30. You were 29. So she never got to see you get sworn in. She saw you win the seat. You were an unlikely winner. It was mostly Republican district.
Well, Freudian slip. Nixon only won by 60% in my state that year, and I won by 100 votes.
Well, God knows how you did that. But that's what I mean about your family. Your old man was out there knocking on doors for you. They thought he was.
Okay. 30% was 100 votes. So Nixon had 60%. He only had 200 votes in that whole state. 200 votes. A total of 300 votes. How many comes out of that state now? 400,000 just on the votes.
Running for Senate, not you, because you were a kid. It's pretty amazing family. And I again,
I'm proud of it.
I submit for your approval that when you have a loving family like that, you got a lot to give because you get so much from them.
I agree.
Most people who aren't generous are because they haven't been given anything.
Well, the other thing is, it's an expectation in the family. You know, like I said before, probably the greatest gift I ever got was being a stutterer. Because you know what it's like to be humiliated. You know what it's like. I don't want to exaggerate it. It's not like I had a cleft palate or I had a
Right.
club foot but it's something people make fun of. And you realize how humiliating it is. So it taught me to understand what other people are going through.
How'd you get rid of this stutter? Was it that you?
I practiced. I'd stand in front of the mirror and just try to make sure that I blah, 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 blah. And I just worked, but it wasn't, my mother used to say, Joey, come here. Look at me. Look at me. You're smart. You're handsome. You're a good boy. Just don't let this define you. Don't let it define you.
You're a good boy. Here, boy. Here. Here, boy.
And it just, I don't want to exaggerate how debilitating it was, but it was easy to make fun of.
Like he was
because
talking about
when
a
I tried to
dog.
speak in
You're a
public,
good
when I
boy.
tried to reading and talking on the telephone are two hard things for stutterers. And by the way, I've got a group now, I don't know how many it's up to, I think 38 kids who are serious stutterers since I've been president, who I engage with, who are still getting it. There's a young man, I'm so proud of him. He actually did my nominating speech for the 2020 election.
How did you get involved with these kids? I mean,
I'd meet them. For example, the one young man I met, I don't want to mention his name, but I met it was out in the Midwest, and I was with his mom. I was doing a political event as vice president, and I could see him, and you can tell the stutter when they talk, just the way they begin to move their lips. And I said to him, you got a minute? I said, I got to work on my speech. Can you come with me? And the mother looked at me and said, "Here's something before I go out and speak, because I mark up my speeches." You ever see the movie The King's Speech?
Yes.
Well, the guy who wrote The King's Speech contacted me and sent me a copy of The King's Speech.
Great
He actually used to put slash marks. So it was stuttering is about getting a cadence, at least for me.
It's musical.
Exactly. By the way, you notice a lot of singers are stutterers.
That's right.
Not a lot, but I mean, great singers are stutterers.
Mel Tillis was like the guy. I mean, he had a horrible.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
But if you learn to just make a little bit of it sounds choppy, but I went to the movie with my wife instead I went to the movie. And so I practiced a lot. I would used to stand in front of the mirror and at night, and my siblings, we were three of us in one bedroom, but I'd stand in front of the mirror, and I know a lot of poetry, a lot of particular Irish poetry, because I'd practice it just but I don't want to exaggerate.
I know a lot of other things. I have a particular set of skills.
But it was real, and
it's real trauma because, especially look at the life you chose. You have to get up and make speeches. You have to debate people. You have you become a lawyer and you have to go argue in court on behalf of people. I mean, what could be more important than having a confident, fluent speech?
But by that time, I was over most of the stuttering. But like, for example, Trump makes fun of me.
Right.
He was the kind of guy in the neighborhood who wish he could have gotten in the neighborhood, meet head to head. But at any rate.
Here's what I don't get. And maybe it's just me. And the whole Trump thing, Okay, before he got into office, he was more subdued and, you know, didn't really have it was like it's like once he got into office, he was like, okay, I'm gonna just show it all. He goes after a person that has a learning disability, goes after other people that have problems upon themselves, then goes after the LGBT and makes it okay for anybody to speak their mind, whether they're wrong or right. And it's them that has that certain, you know, if I say something on Twitter, it's the truth. It's this, it's that, it's art. If you do it as Trump, it's a executive order. I just screwed that one up. But I mean, it's the executive order. You know, that whole thing. When did this become the United States of today? When did this happen that we can just sit there and make fun of anybody and everybody and get away with it? Or, have a political figure making fun of a news person and get away with it? Or having so much drama that, you know, they can get, you know, they can go into office and take what they've earned and put it towards the other drama that, I mean, literally, when did this happen? I mean, yes, Bill Clinton had Monica Lewinsky. George Bush Jr. had his own Texas way of thinking. Obama had his pauses. But nowhere in their right mind, and they'll touch on this in a little bit, but nowhere in their right mind should a person incite an insurrection at a building where a police officer got murdered. And I mean, if let's say it like this, Texas is known for some horrible stuff. But of a police officer here in the state of Texas, the other police department, whoever catches this person, let's say it like this, they're not showing up to their court date. We know this. I've seen it before. Why do we have to start lying? Why can't we just tell the truth on everything? And it just, well, I'm letting Biden rest for just a moment. I mean, he looks tired. He looks tired. He does. Looks like he looked like he passed out. But yeah, it's one of those things where, like I said, we need to start telling the truth. We need to start, if you're going to make fun of people, especially with disabilities, if you're going to make fun of people because of who they are, then you don't need to run. You never need to run. Especially, nowadays. Just, you know, my my soapbox, as I would say.
You
Yeah,
know,
by the way, speaking of that, didn't your mother, the first fist fight you ever had, some bully in your neighborhood, and your mother says to you, "Listen, go back to this bully." I guess the guy really had it with you, and she said, "Go back and punch him in the
well, to
face."
be precise, in Scranton, we lived in a place called Green Ridge, and down the bottom of the hill by the Lackawanna River is called the Plot.
Yeah.
And there was a family, I'll not mention the name, they were pretty tough. And I was 14 years old, I guess, and they'd come up on what they call Dimmick Avenue. And anyway, they were up in the backyard. I walked out the yard with two of my friends, and this particular guy came up to me and smacked me. And I hold my face, and I came back across the fence into the kitchen. My grandfather was there, and he says, "What's?" I said, "He hit me." And I walked in, and the pantry looked out on that avenue, that alley. And my mother said, "Joey, go back out there." I said, "Mom, he'll beat me up." He said, "Joey, I have a quarter." That was big. You go back out, but here's what you do, Joey. Wait till he'll come back to you. As soon as he walks up to you, don't do a single thing except you got to hit him right in the nose, Joe,
Right.
in the nose. I was scared to death. He said, "So go out there, Joey." So I went out scared to death, got up across the little bank there. He walked up to me, and I, with all the courage I had, I hit him right, and his nose started bleeding. He went, "Oh!" Took off.
Really?
She came, "Oh, I'm serious."
It's a very cinematic life you've had. I mean, that's a
no,
scene.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
This, I know it sounds
Hit him in the nose, Joe. Hit him in the nose. That's your new name.
bizarre.
No, it
But
doesn't.
everybody at home still kids me about it. At home, meaning Scranton. Anyway, and I walked back. She said, "Here's a
No, I thought you meant Nashville.
quarter, and I'll get you another quarter tomorrow."
When you became a football player, was that kid still going to school with you? Because I'm pretty
No,
sure.
he never went to school with me.
Oh,
he
he was
was
just
just down. He was
local
a local kid.
I wonder if that guy's still around. I mean, like he sees you become president of the United States. I wonder if it's like, do you ever do that? Do you ever like go on Facebook and look up people that you grew up with and go, "Hey, look what became of me"? Like,
No, I
no?
don't do that. But I keep in contact with those people. I mean, the people, my friends. Like when I'm back home to Scranton last week, Larry Org.
That's something I do. In fact, I've had a couple of them on my podcast whenever it was the Big J Watch Show. And I'm planning on having them back up under the new show name, Transgamer Live Podcast. And I've had a couple of them on since I came out and stuff like that. And it's very interesting the dynamic of knowing their thoughts and knowing how they felt at that point in time and how they look at it today. It's just plain astonishing. It's I couldn't ask for most of them I couldn't ask for better friends.
A guy that we grew up with, known for 55 years. I invited Larry to come with me. He's still around. And I'm getting so damn old, a lot of them are passed away these days.
I know it's depressing.
And
But what about like a woman who rejected you in high school? Now you could just like say, "Hey, I'm the president of the United States." That to me is the biggest rush in the world.
no, I don't think of it that way, Howard.
You should come into my world. That's all I think about.
See, that's the way I think. Is like, hey, you rejected me a long time ago. Guess where I'm at today? Guess who I am? Guess whose taxes is probably going up? Here, let me sip some tea.
It's all about that.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, but
The
anyway,
only reason I was not allowed to go out with some girls
Hey, look, I'm sitting in Joe's lap.
was because I was Catholic.
yeah, that was I guess your first wife. The family didn't want you anything to do with you because you were Catholic,
Well,
right?
they liked my first wife was up in Skinny Atlas. They were in Auburn, New York. The family was really from near Syracuse, and the father was an incredible guy. but his older sister was very involved in the Presbyterian Church.
Wow.
And
Can you believe that's a thing? Like, can you believe back then that was a big thing? Like, I don't
and
even
so-
know the difference between Catholic and
and
Presbyterian.
There are 45,000 religious sects in Christianity alone. Just within the United States, there's over 100,000 globally.
remember I went up like the fifth trip, and Nelia looked at me and said, my dad told me I have to stop dating you because you're a Catholic. And I said, oh, man. She looked at me, she said, but I told him, don't make me choose, Daddy. Don't make me choose.
What a great woman.
And but her dad actually showed up, which was really I forever indebted to him. Showed up at at the Catholic Church in Skinny Atlas, and walked her up the aisle with me.
Wow.
Guinea Atlas. Where's this, Joe? Where's this?
Wow. They got over the religious difference
yeah.
thing.
I don't think it was more of family pressure he had, I think.
So here's the key question, and maybe it's a difficult one to really get into, but when you lose the love of your life and you lose your 13-month-old daughter, which again, it gives me the chills even to say it to you, and I hate bringing it up, but at the same point, I think it's useful that you described you were suicidal at that point. You thought about it.
Well, what I said was, I can understand you don't have to be nuts to commit suicide. I used to say, I said, I don't drink. That's not a virtue. I just
Never drank?
I never drank. And I used to sit there and think to myself, I'm just going to take out a bottle of scotch that was, we always had liquor in the house, in my house as well. And I was going to just drink it and get drunk. And I could never bring myself to do it. And I actually thought about, you don't have to be crazy to commit suicide. If you've been to the top of the mountain, you think it's never going to be there again. And just a brief moment, I thought maybe I'd just go to the Delaware Memorial Bridge and jump.
Wow.
But I had two kids. I mean, it wasn't, don't get me wrong, I wasn't like, I got to commit suicide. It was like, you've been to the top of the mountain and it's never going to happen again. You're never going to be okay. But I had, and I had, and my boys, when we started to date Jill, we started to date Jill.
Well, you did. Didn't the boys give you permission to date Jill?
More than that.
Yeah.
They came in one morning. We used to drive to school. We dropped them off at school, Tommy Lewis, and then drop me at the station on the way. And so I'm in the bathroom, and they walk in. I'm brushing my teeth, and Bo looked at Hunter and said, and they're second or third grade, I guess, maybe a little older, fourth. Anyway, in the early grades, and Bo looked at Hunter and said, "You tell him." I said, "You tell him." Finally, said, "Well, guys, what are you going to tell me?" And Bo said, Dad, Hunt and I think we should marry Jill.
They liked her.
And they liked her. And then we went up to, my sister had a Jesuit friend who was, because I didn't know how to, everybody was wonderful in my state when I lost my family. As the old expression goes, I had a lot of yentas who were, but they were really generous. But I didn't know how to have a wedding and who to invite. So our families, her family and mine, we all went to New York, and we got married at the UN Chapel by this Jesuit priest who was a street priest up there, a friend of my sister's. And literally, spontaneously, in the chapel, when they said, "Who takes this woman?" and both boys got up from their seats and walked up. No, I'm serious.
And they said, "We do."
And they said, they stood with me.
How great is that?
It's wonderful.
It really is
It's
a wonderful story. Did you consider psychotherapy or speaking to a therapist at the time when you lose your family and you're in crisis?
I didn't.
Why do you? Were you
I don't know.
Because remember when Eagleton admitted that he had therapy or he had shock therapy or something, and then Muskie cried. I think back on politics. It's like almost like if you're a politician, you're not allowed to say, "I'm in therapy."
Well, by the way, I strongly encourage people to go to therapy. I strongly encourage people to deal with mental illness. It's just like you're breaking a bone in your body.
Right.
But I guess because I
Strong brain, strong. I mean, Yes, mental illness is become a dirty word in our society whenever in every part of the world they take care of it. It's not a bad word. It's a strong mental frame is a strong mind. And just like you go to work out your body to stay in shape or to tone up, same thing you got to do with your mind. I may have a sharp mind, but I may be fat. Don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, literally. Be nice to each other.
Had such an internal support serve. I mean, I never considered it, but I wish I had. I remember when the boys were hospitalized, and Hunter had his fractured skull from the accident, and Bo broke literally every bone in his body. He was in a body cast, both arms, both legs, for a long time.
Is there anything worse than that? Not only losing your daughter, but when you see your kids.
No,
There's a Family Guy reference there. Either that or a Simpsons reference. Seth, I need your help.
I remember my kids, if anything happened to them, like any
Yeah.
break a bone or something,
Yeah.
you go out of your mind.
Well, what happened was that when I came home, I came to the hospital one day after work, and there was a child psychologist from the University of Massachusetts that Teddy Kennedy had sent down,
Wow.
and I should have paid more attention. And it was wonderful. We got engaged, but I think I would have gone out of my way more. But I guess it's because I don't know. My family was my extended family was so, they enveloped us so much. I don't know.
That's right. When your gas tank is filled, when you have like your sister and your brother moving in and all this support system and,
My mother, my father.
yeah,
my
the loving
everybody.
family. I mean, it's so, I guess in a way you can get away without getting a therapist because,
But I'd encourage people to get therapy. I hope they don't read from this that you shouldn't get a therapist.
yeah,
I think it's really important. Mental illnesses should not be viewed as anything different than a physical illness.
I agree.
And it should be just treated. And they have real serious people and experts who can help.
Who do you think was the greatest president of all time? I have an answer for this, but I want to hear yours.
I want everybody to answer this in the comments section. Who is the greatest president of all time? Mine may have had a short amount of time in office, was definitely going after people that should have been going after, and that was John Kennedy.
Well, I think Jefferson was one of my favorite presidents of all time. But also there were people who came along in periods. I think the fact that Roosevelt, came when he did, and the way he did, and the way he stood up. I hope you come to my office one day. I sat in that Oval Office for 8 years with Barack every morning at 9:00. And and before that, I was chairman of foreign relations. So I was in and out of that office a lot
Yeah.
in my job. And there was one portrait, a small portrait of George Washington hanging over the mantel. And so I didn't realize at the time when we got elected that the outgoing president on inauguration has to be out by, I think, 10:00. And the new guy or woman can't come in until, I think, 4. There's a space there. So you can decide what desk you want, what drug, et cetera. So my brother Jimmy has better taste than I do. So I asked Jimmy, would you do my office? And he had John Meacham, the president's historian, he asked help from. And I come walking in, and I look, and there's this big portrait of Franklin Roosevelt. And I admired Roosevelt, but And I looked, I said, Jimmy, why Roosevelt? And Meacham spoke up and said, because no president has inherited a world of more disarray than him, than you. And so I said, that's wonderful. And then I looked over, there's four more portraits, the small one of Washington and then one of Abraham Lincoln. And I said, why Lincoln? He said, because the nation's never been as divided since then. I said, I'm getting the hell out of here.
You're not kidding.
But
I mean, you
but
talk.
so there's a lot of people a lot of presidents that I admire the hell out of, and I think that I think Barack was a hell of a president,
I did too.
and
Was it hard for you? I mean, you had spent so many years in the Senate. You were so prepared to be president yourself. Was it hard to be vice president? I would think in some ways you'd say to yourself, gee, I liked it better in the Senate. At least I had more to do.
I'll tell you a true story. When I was Barack became the de facto candidate in, I guess it was in the middle of August.
Yeah.
And I'm riding home on the train as usual, and I get a phone call. And it's Barack. He said, I want to do a background check on you. I said, Barack, I don't want to be vice president. I can help you much more as a senior senator. I was fairly successful there. And he said, well, there's only two of you. Or I think that's what he said. And I said, Barack, he said, well, there's only you. And I said, Barack, I don't want to be vice president. I can help you better.
Sure.
And so I go home. He said, do me a favor. When you get home tonight, he knew my family. Talk to your family. Get back to me in 24, maximum 48 hours. I said, okay, Barack. So I call and said, let's get a family meeting in the back porch. We get a family meeting. And to my, not to my surprise, Jill says, you ought to do it. And I said, what? She said, otherwise you'll be asked to be Secretary of State and you'll be away all the time.
Yeah.
And then my son, Bo, gave a reason why I should do it, and Hunter and everybody. And my mom.
Very true. Secretary of State just goes everywhere all the time, never at home.
Mom was living with us this time because we just lost my dad. And I looked at my mom. I said, honey, you haven't said anything. She said, Joey, let me remember. True story. She said, remember when they were desegregating Linfield, the neighborhood? There was, 70 homes built at one suburbia. And I told you, and there was a black family moving in, and there was people were down there protesting. I told you not to go down there, and you went down. Remember that? And you got arrested, be standing on the porch with a black family.
Right.
And they brought you back, the police. And I said, yeah, Mom, I remember that. And she said, and then she looks at me, she said, and Joey, remember you had that job as a lifeguard in that country club setting, but you wanted to be the only white guy working in the bucket on the east side in a black neighborhood? I said, yeah, Mom, I remember that. She said, well, let me get this straight. When I called you and asked you about Barack when he defeated you back in the spring, you said he was bright, he was honest, he was really a capable guy. I said, yeah, Mom, what's your point? She said, Joey, the first black man in history has a chance to be president, and you told him no.
Right.
I said, son of a bitch.
Yeah, that is crazy too. By the way, I forgot to bring that up. I was going to bring that up too about not only were you a star football player, but you were a lifeguard. I mean, you really and you were the only white guy who was lifeguarding in this black community, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you were the one guy.
I was.
Yeah.
But I learned so much. That's one reason I wanted to go down. A lot of athletes had those jobs. That's how you got the jobs.
I see.
There were 3 big swimming pools in the city, and this was in the projects. And so what I realized, I mean, for example, I remember a guy named Jamie Rolls, who was a great ball player, and he went to Slasianum High School. And he came up to me one day. He said, "Do you have any jerry cans? You know those big cans?"
Yeah, big jerry jug.
And I said, "No, what do I need a jerry can for?" He said, "I need."
Okay. I understand that some of the audience is going to be young. They don't know what a jerry can is or a jerry jug, whatever. In the South, we have those big, huge 5-gallon cans that used to go on back end of Jeeps or they was really known in World War II as a jerry can. And basically on the top you had like a screw lid, and everything was metal or aluminum. But on the other end, instead of having just one handle, you had three handles. And basically, you could, if it was full, you could pick it up by two, or you could just pick it up by the one and then carry it and then dump it into a funnel. Some of them had a built in funnel on the other side of the lid. But yeah, that's what a jerry can is. So yeah, it was a thing.
Need one. I said, what do you, I'm going to see my mother, my grandmother. So what do you, he said, Joe, you know I can't stop at any gas stations between here and North Carolina.
He used it as a bathroom. Yeah.
No, he used it.
To go to urinating.
No, beyond that, he brought the gas, extra gas in it.
I thought he was, I mean, he can't go to a gas station.
Yeah, you couldn't back then. This was 1965, I guess.
Oh, I thought he wasn't allowed. I thought he wasn't even allowed to use the bathroom. That's where my mind went. But you're right.
He couldn't
stop.
About
he couldn't get gas.
Needing gas.
Can you imagine? What a world! What a world! I mean,
but you know, I learned a lot, and I made a lot of friends.
Did you ever save anyone's life when you were a lifeguard? Was anyone ever drowning? You did?
Yeah, well, half a dozen times. Usually younger kids, you know.
Here's Howard being Howard. Yeah. Whenever you was a lifeguard, did you actually save any kids? Yeah, I would hope so.
But
you do the thing with the whistle and then jump in the bathing suit and
you got it.
No kidding.
Yeah, there's a big pool. There were 7 lifeguard stands.
Wow.
7 lifeguard stands. Oh my God. 7 lifeguard stands.
See, that would define my. I would brag about that everywhere I went.
Well, by the way, I did it up in Lake Ontario too when I was in law school. But look, one of the things that
what, you saved a dude's life when you were in law school? You were still doing the lifeguard thing?
Yeah, lifeguards. I mean, you know, people just need help sometimes. I mean, it's not like it's so heroic.
Yeah, it's a big deal. We should play that up in the movie.
Yeah, everybody should play that up. I mean, really, it like Howard was saying earlier, it's more of a cinematic type role.
Movie of your life.
Well, by the way, it got played up because when I ran the first time, they said it was true. I was running for it's called a county council.
County council, yeah.
After I got out of law school, we didn't have any money to buy a home or anything. So had this real estate agent. We were looking for rentals. Her husband and she had managed this pool called the Country Swimming Club, which was a private swimming club in suburban in a nice part of town that a number of judges put together because when they'd be up in the summer working in Wilmington, they had a place to go. And it was a very modest thing, and a nice pool, and had a little bathhouse and the rest, and it had a little gatehouse on it. And so she worked out that I could live in that gatehouse for free if I'd managed the pool. I was practicing law.
Wow.
But I just, as long as I hired her, we kept it going. And so when they ran against me, they said, why the hell would you vote for Biden? All he's ever been in his whole life is a lifeguard.
They threw it in your face.
Well, it was a good. I don't blame him.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
It was a good.
It is what a crazy career you've had. I mean,
well, it's not like there's any straight line to it. It's not like I started off to, do that. It's like anyway.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So now, let me get back to some romance, if you don't mind.
Sure. Okay.
So I don't know how long it takes you before you start dating.
Romance, one of Howard's biggest ways to, talk.
But when you lost your wife, you were
About
devastated.
5 years.
5 years.
Well, I got out. I had gone out other times, but I basically gave up going out because it got complicated, and And that, I guess Jill and I went out 2.5, 3 years after I'd lost.
What did you feel like you were betraying your first wife?
No, it wasn't that. I just didn't feel. It became it was like a celebrity issue. I go out and Biden's going out, and when I did go out, we'd make sure the press didn't know I was going out.
Right.
Like for example, the first time Jill and I went out, we went to Philadelphia to see a movie, and I didn't like the movie, The Man and a Woman. It was
Oh, I remember that movie, Man and a Woman.
Yeah, I went up to Philly because no one in Philly, you couldn't go to locally, and so anyway, it was. But I just got really, really lucky, and Jill is incredible.
It's like sort of what happened with your first wife. Like when you were like, I think I'm going to marry this. Your brother found a picture of her, or he showed you a picture.
The DuPont company did a lot of business in Washington.
Yeah, the way that Biden and Jill actually met is astonishing, and something like I said, very cinematic.
And the Wilmington airport, they convinced an airline to come and fly once a day, back and forth commercially. So I went down, and they had this big life-size banner in there of advertising that and the woman in the banner standing there was Jill.
Oh.
And turns out she had a friend in Delaware who asked her if he could take a picture of her and use her. And I remember going home and saying, I saw a beautiful woman. I mean, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And it turns out the blind date was with that woman.
How strange is that?
So let's get this right. He saw a picture of this woman in the Delaware airport. Come to find out it was Jill. And now he's fixing to pop the question to her. Creepy level going up. Just going up. Joking.
It's fate.
Fate. And you, again, pretty much knew right away. It was like,
Oh, I did. I really did.
but here's something I heard about your relationship with your wife that blew me away. So you meet her, you go out with her, you find yourself, I want her to be my girlfriend. I want her to be exclusive with me. And you tell her this, and she says, well, I have a date with another guy.
That's right.
This is the best. She goes, I have a date with another guy, and I would feel dishonest not going out with him. And that's got to be the worst feeling in the world when you're falling in love with someone and they're going out on a date with another guy.
Well, it was the second time I was within 3 days of taking her out the first time.
She said, no, I can't skip this date that I have with this guy.
Well, she did.
She did? Good for you. But it was pretty much love at first sight again, right? I mean,
Well, for me, it really was. I mean, I just like we have the same family values. I got to meet her family. Her dad was a wonderful guy. She has 4. I tell every man he should marry into a family with 5 or more sisters. And she's the oldest of 5 because one of them will always love you, not the same one. One
Right.
will always stick up for you.
That's good.
But I got to meet them. I got to meet her grandparents. They were originally from South Jersey, Hamilton, New Jersey. Her dad ended up being the president of a savings and loan in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. But they were just wonderful people.
Why did you have to propose so many times? What was that all about?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know why. It turns out I asked Jill 5 times to marry me. And so I was down trying to get to see Nelson Mandela with the Black Caucus when in South Africa. And I came home and I got off the plane commercially in Philadelphia, drove straight to her apartment.
He asked her 5 different times. Creeper level going up.
Apartment in Wilmington, knocked. They said, "Oh, Joe, come on in." And I said, "No." I said, "Look, you got my Irish up." I said, "I'm going to ask you one more time," and I promised just one more time.
Because you had asked 5 times in 2 years.
I asked 4 times.
4 times, okay.
And one more time, I said, "You don't have to tell me when, but if. Will you marry me?" And she went like, okay.
Great.
And we'll let my sister later ask her why she
Hold up. I did this same thing in high school and I got called a creep. He gets it done going through the Senate and he's a hero. Worlds have changed. Or maybe the older people are correct. I don't know yet.
said yes and why she had been hesitant. She said she had fallen in love with the boys, and she said, I couldn't imagine disappointing them. What happens if it didn't work? How could we ever do that?
Right. Oh, man. Let me, when I have rock stars in here, I talk about their greatest hits. And, I'm going to go back to the Senate. A couple of things I'm going to mention. And the first thing is back in, I want to say 94, Violence Against Women Act.
Yes.
This is something you were passionate about. You got that you were one of the creators of this. And then the other day, I'm watching the news, and now they're talking about the Supreme Court that they might undo it.
It's the proudest thing I've ever done. It took me years to get it done.
But who would be against that?
Well, I got to be careful what I say about the court, but
Why do you have to be careful?
Well, I think it's important to.
It's a joke. First of all, does it drive you crazy? This keeps me up at night, and I'm not exaggerating. It occurs to me every day that when Obama had his time to appoint a Supreme Court justice, he was going to appoint Garland. These maniacs in the Senate said, no way, not interested. And now we've got a Supreme Court that's nuts.
Well, it's a really extremely conservative court, maybe the most conservative court in modern history. And, one of the things that when they struck down Roe v. Wade, saying that it was not federal constitutionally guaranteed, it was a state issue. States could make those judgments. I think they don't, and one of the justices, Clarence Thomas, said, it's not that women don't have a choice. They can, in fact, change it if they, in effect, at a state level, but we'll see if they have any power. Well, they ain't seen nothing yet. You're going to see what will happen. If I'm elected president again in the second term, we're going to be able to overrule them, not overrule, we're going to be able to make Roe v. Wade the law of the land again because based on every state in the union being able to judge or get a majority vote in the Congress.
You think we can do? You think that
I think
can be
we
done?
can do that because I think there's going to be a real lesson learned on the mega Republican side of the aisle because we're going to see a whole hell of a lot of state referenda, and they're going to want to restore it, and that's going to be able to be done.
Can I tell you a fantasy I had?
Sure.
I don't know if you're going to debate.
See, here's my biggest thing on the whole Roe v. Wade and the whole government situation. Let's go with the government situation. If there's a Democratic see, we've all been taught whenever we go through high school government class and also in college government class that everything's about checks and balances. We don't have that. We don't have that because we have a two-party system that really doesn't work because there's no checks and balances. There's a little bit of checks and balances because one party's not getting what they want while the other party's getting what they want. Okay? Where it should be the best for the American people, it's not. It's what's best for the political person. It's what's best for that type party. See, what they need to do is if you have a Senate that is Republican, the Congress is Democrat, you should have a president that is just a, you know, third party. That way, there is some type of checks and balances, like an independent, that way, both parties have to work together for the common good. You can't just, just shine a turd and make it a shoe and call it good with all these other with all the other things, because whenever you have no types of checks and balances, you run into like like for instance, whenever the Republicans was over it, you was running into so many problems, and finally Democrats got in there and started stopping some of the problems. But they couldn't get it all done because guess what? Then they got overruled by the president. And the thing about Roe v. Wade, yes, I do think it needed to be updated. But on Roe v. Wade, would it gotten what it put it out to be, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, is that a person can go have relations with a woman that wasn't her consent, and now that woman has to have that child no matter what, because if she goes and gets it aborted or stuff like that, she can be brought up on criminal charges. And that's sad. That makes DC, with all the mess that's going up there, because we know them people ain't saints. It makes them, they're going to be paying child support. Yeah. So let's go on with this.
Debate your opponent.
I am somewhere. I don't know when.
Yeah.
I'm happy to debate him.
This is how I would handle it. Tell me if I'm nuts. Well, I am nuts, but tell me if this is accurate. I would stand there on stage with Trump and I would repeat over and over again, excuse me, please find me 11,000 votes so that I can win the election. I would just repeat that over and over again. And then I'd say to the audience, what are we debating? A man picked up the phone.
It's the same thing he did in the 2020 election, cried and cried and cried because he said that he won the election, but then, he didn't. And then he cried, oh, it's voter fraud, it's this, it's that. No, you lost fair and square. Now you're trying to come in again, and you're going to be in the same predicament as President Biden is whenever he leaves office.
And wanted to say, fake the election, give me 11,000 votes. I don't know how any American who loves this country, that's the end of the debate. You don't get to run if you're going to fix an election.
Well, look, I think I said on January 6th, when...
Also, another thing, I think we need to, and this is, me being independent and stuff like that, we do need to get rid of the Electoral College. I don't think it's really doing its job nowadays like it was supposed to at first. Just me. Yeah.
They were storming the Capitol.
And a police officer died.
Yep. And he would say nothing. He was sitting in that office that dining area off the Oval Office for 3 hours and said nothing. I was supposed to make a speech on the economy that day. Instead, I made a speech from I was in Delaware on that issue because I was elected president, but I wasn't sworn in yet. The idea that we were actually not, I mean, it was derelict. It was almost criminal. Did nothing. He just sat there and watched what was happening. Not a single. And now he wants to call. He calls them patriots and victims, and I mean, and says he's going to pardon them all if he's reelected.
How do
Uh,
some of the guys
I'm sorry, if you cause an insurrection, you should go down with that ship. I mean, it's one of those things that you sit there and you cause this, and then somebody dies, you should be brought up on murder too. Because it was your words that led to this point in time. If you wouldn't have said anything that would have sparked them from going off like they did on January 6th, you wouldn't have had nothing, nothing bad coming against you. But you did this, and now people are going against you, and you don't know why. It's your problem.
that you served in the Senate with? I'm talking about Republicans.
they don't.
How are they going along with this?
Well, I don't think. Look, this is not your father's Republican Party.
No, it isn't.
This is, I had a lot of Republicans, including the old segregationists that I served with, who at least you could talk to, at least on matters relating to they were totally wrong on civil rights, but the fact is that they understood there's a need for a consensus to run this country. And I gave my word I'd never say their names, and I never will. In the last 3 years, I've had 7 sitting Republican senators. Well, 2 are gone now. 7 sitting Republican senators call me to tell me, Joe, I agree with you, but I just can't do it. He'll get me.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you get these calls in secret where guys go, listen, I can't say it publicly, but I'm for you and I'm going to vote for you. I'm a Republican.
I bet he does all the time. I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, it is what it is. People get tired of one side and switch over to the other side.
Republican, but screw it. I can't vote for this guy
Well,
because he's talking about ending the democracy.
well, they're not saying they're going to vote for me. They're saying I agree with you. Yeah.
And do you say to them, you coward? Why don't you say something publicly? Where's Jeb Bush? Where's George Bush? Where are these guys? Why don't they say, hey, I'm interested in saving the democracy for our grandchildren?
Well, I don't think the election's over yet on that score.
What do you think's going to happen? I can't imagine you're going to lose, but
Well, look, he's promised if he doesn't win, there's going to be a bloodbath.
can you
Things
imagine?
like that. Here's what bothers me most.
What bothers me about the whole thing is exactly what President Biden just said. If he doesn't win, he's already said that there's going to be a bloodbath. That that's not democracy. That is dictatorship. And that's what this country don't need is dictatorship. It's I mean, literally they need somebody to be a democratic leader and being able to discuss and free will. Yeah, this country needs that. This country always needed that. And that's how this country was built. It was that. It wasn't because of a dictatorship. If we wanted that, we would have had a king and queen. We would have had a dictator like Saddam Hussein or you know Fidel Castro or other people like that. I mean, I'm not a history teacher by no means, but I mean, it's one of those things where we've learned from we've learned from other people's mistakes and also learned from ours to acknowledge that we don't need this and we never do.
We have a fundamentally different value set. For example, when he was in Paris, he wouldn't go to that gravesite and said they're losers, these men and women who were killed in battle defending America. Losers, and I'm glad I wasn't there, because I think I would have. My son's in one of those graves, in one of the graves back here, not there. And the idea that they're losers and suckers, a
And
president
McCain's a
saying
loser.
that.
He said McCain's a
Well,
loser.
McCain's a loser.
Can you imagine? 'Cause
When John McCain,
You know, I may have had problems with some of McCain's ideology because he was a Republican, but he also served in, he served for our military. I've known several people, and, you know, I'm just saying, if this is true, if what President Biden said is true from what Trump said, he doesn't need to be elected, because anybody that serves for this country is a hero. And it should be a hero in every one of our books, because they serve to protect our freedom, our rights, our everything that we call the United States of America. And if Trump has called them losers and idiots and everything else, he don't need to be elected.
got out of prison and was released, he came work for me. He was on the Senate liaison officer. We traveled over 100,000 miles together. And he was like an assistant, because he worked for
it's a
the
fabulous
military.
man. I got to meet him before he died.
No, he was a straight up guy, man, and
Yeah.
tough as hell. And but I just I find I can't fathom a president of the United States of America saying that the folks who died defending this country were suckers and losers.
But I can't forget him. I can't fathom a guy walks into the voting booth, especially a military member or somebody, and would vote for someone who says military guys who die are losers and suckers. In other words, I'm not this.
The only type that I could think of that would say something like that would be Marines. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I would hate for somebody to say that towards somebody being military in front of me.
Disappointed in him. I'm disappointed in my fellow Americans. And maybe you can't say that because, the thing I do like about you is I love this about you. You're able to embrace people who didn't vote for you. And to me, that's fundamentally good. And I want that in a president.
Well, I think so. Look, I think there's an awful lot of military personnel who are not enamored with Trump. I don't think it's and a fair number of them voted for me in 2020.
Good.
I mean, I don't know the names, but my point is, I think.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really? First up, we've got Shake.
Look, you're an expert on the subject I raise. I wonder what you think. How much do you think the modern media has altered the landscape?
The
And of course, I did all of that on mute. Ha ha! You wouldn't know this, but yeah, it's a whole thing. Um, so of course, 3 minutes of good talking on mute. I will actually do this after this
Internet,
go.
these apps, it has now generated a hatred and viciousness where people who used to be in the minority have found each other, and it's a growing movement. And I am so afraid for our democracy right now that people would embrace anyone who says they're going to, get into
Well,
office.
look, one of the things is that there are no editors anymore.
No, everyone says everything.
And, it's, and I think that
There is no editors. And like I was saying earlier, I guess I'll say it now that 100% of the media is controlled in different within different factions. You have you have Fox News, Newsmax. There's a couple other ones that are controlled by the Republican uh you know, basically they're controlled by Republicans. CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, they're more democratic. So, yeah, I mean, it has altered the landscape of what we know and what we hear as a as a whole group, as a nation. But there is some that will tell everything. Um, and if you're interested in getting independent views and stuff like that, it's like what I say whenever I talk about politics on my channel. I'm able to call bullshit on both sides. So if you're one of those type people, we can actually uh get news stations for you and stuff like that that's totally independent.
I think there's a lot of really. I'm doing the gridiron dinner on Saturday,
Right.
and one of the things, the serious thing I'm going to say at the gridiron dinner is that, paraphrasing Jefferson, he said the choice between what we have and a free press, I'd pick a free press.
Damn right.
Well, guess what? The free press is not speaking up as much as it used to.
Nope.
And I don't know I'm not sure. I haven't figured it out yet, but I think it's coming around. And I'm not blaming the press. I'm just.
They can't speak. The free press can't speak like it used to because it's blocked by the two-party system. Republicans don't want what Democrats say, and the Democrats don't want to hear what the Republicans say, even though that we're trying to go back to a system that was built way back when. We need a change.
Just saying that I think some of them are worried about attacking him, worried about taking him on.
Yeah, everybody's scared. I don't know why they're so scared. I don't get it. And and by the way,
He's one of the richest people in the United States. He's like top 15 of the richest people. Kind of don't want to attack a sleeping bear. They've already learned that over in, I think it was Aberdeen, Scotland. I'll get the movie reference. It's on, I want to say it's on Netflix. but it's definitely a good watch. Or no, it was on YouTube. It's definitely a good watch. Um, just one of those things that you have to look at.
Wait, did you ever think you'd live in an America where Republicans are for Putin? I mean,
No.
I bang my head against the wall. Thank God you got the whole, the Ukraine aid. I mean, who the hell?
I spent a lot of time in Ukraine, and I'll tell you what, had we not gotten that done, I think you might see the beginning. Kissinger, before he died, 10 days before he died, got a message saying that, said, not since Napoleon has Europe not looked over their shoulder at Russia with dread until now.
Yep.
You've strengthened NATO, you've expanded it, you've moved it.
I can't thank you enough for that.
Well, it's not just me, but the point is I've worked really hard to spend hours and hours and hours doing this. And the idea that had we not gotten this done, I think you would have seen a beginning of disintegration of NATO.
I know. Did you ever think you'd see that in your lifetime?
No.
No.
Except that he says Trump thinks we should not have NATO. He thinks we should not. He doesn't support NATO, and he thinks they're not inviting Putin to invade Ukraine because they not putting or any other NATO partner because they're not putting enough money up.
Can you believe there are two people who believe that? I mean, you think about all the men who died in World War II fighting Nazis and keeping this democracy alive. And now it's like, it's crazy. Speaking about service, and again, because I was asking you about loss, the loss of your son was devastating. But you know what strikes me? Here you were a U.S. Senator, and you know the song by Creedence Clearwater, I'm Not a Fortunate Son. Your son, here's a son of a senator, joins the military and was in Iraq.
Well, look, Bo,
If you really want to be a CEO, want to be an entrepreneur, you should take the first step. Create the LLC. It doesn't really cost.
My son Bo should be sitting here instead of me. He's more capable than I am. And he was the Attorney General of the state of Delaware. And one day I came home. I'd come home all the time. And he came over to the house. He was living in Delaware. And he said, Dad, what are you doing on Friday? I said, what do you need? He said, I need you to pin my bars on me. I said, pin your bars on you? What the hell are you talking about? He said, I joined the National Guard. And facetiously said, somebody's got to do this anyway. So what happened after that was...
Were you in shock that he joined the National Guard?
No, I wasn't in shock. It didn't surprise me. It just, I wasn't encouraging him to do it. He was sitting Attorney General. He had to give up the Attorney General's job because you either have to work for the president or for the state.
So he was Attorney General at that point.
He was Attorney General. Now he could join the National Guard and be accountable to the governor. But when the Guard unit got sent overseas, he got an exception to be able to give up the response. He wasn't allowed to do any of the Attorney General job, turned it back over to a Republican who had been there before.
Wow.
And went for a year. The problem was he lived next to one of those burn pits. He came back with a Bronze Star. He came back with a Conspicuous Service Medal, but he also came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. Like, the brain injuries out of Iraq are extreme, like they were the people in 9/11, all those firefighters, because of the toxic fumes.
You're convinced that the reason he got brain cancer is...
I know it. It's been determined, yeah. And a lot of them did. A lot of them. It's because of the toxic. Just like we're convinced what happened to those firefighters.
Yep.
And before that, he had, as an assistant U.S. attorney in Philadelphia, he had volunteered to go to Kosovo to help them set up a criminal justice system. They awarded him, he received a medal from the Kosovo, both
What a
parties.
kid. What a kid. How did you know that he had, did he call you and say, Dad, I've gotten a horrible diagnosis?
Yeah, I learned when he learned. He let us know. But he had to come home, and it just kept getting worse, and that's when he realized they did the analysis. And then he was in Walter Reed for a long time. And I wrote a book called Promise Me, Dad. He knew his time was up, and one night we're having a dinner at our home before he was incapacitated, hospitalized. And he said, "Dad, can we talk?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Look at me, Dad. Promise me, Dad. Promise me, Dad, that you'll not leave public life. I know when I go, you'll want to quit. You'll want to quit." And he looked at me and said, "Dad, give me your word as a Biden. Give me your word.
Wow.
Look at me. I'm serious. I give my word on the health of my family." And he said, "Promise me, Dad, you won't step back." And I made the promise. And that's what I ended up writing the book about. Not to sell the book, but so my great-grandchildren and great-great knew who he was.
Wow.
He was, before he passed away, no, I should be, last thing he said before he passed away, I mean, literally we were in the hospital bed, Hunt and I with him, lying in bed with him. He looked at me and said, "I'm not scared, Dad. It's okay. I'm not scared. It's okay." He was gone within. Anyway,
Wow.
You've
had to deal with a lot of loss.
Well, there's a lot of heroes out there that dealt with what I've dealt with and more without the family I had, without support. I'm not joking.
No, I know
There
you're
are
not.
thousands of heroes get up every day, put one foot in front of the other, and they got nobody. They got nobody to help them with that child that survived or with that whatever it was, and they're incredible.
Now I understand why you've.
That is something that, like, it's not only like his family, but it's almost like in every family, you got people that lead a influential life and don't want them to quit. You never do. And I know throughout the losses in my life, just how, like the losses in other people's lives, it does take a toll. And sometimes you got to learn from what they're telling you and march on with your life.
You've said to your family, I'm the president of the United States, but if any of your grandchildren or your children have to get in touch with you, you said, I'll leave any meeting and I will answer the phone.
That's true. And the other thing, I have a rule, and I mean this sincerely. When I ran for re-election after the accident, I realized that I had a million bosses, being from was third or smallest, but only a million people.
Right.
But if I had to choose when they're coming up, if I had to choose between going to a parent-teachers meeting and a vote that wouldn't matter, I'd went to the parent-teacher. I say so. And so during one of the Supreme Court hearings,
most of my technical aptitude was just playing video games.
ECPI University is helping individuals, even those with minimal computer experience.
A really bright guy, I don't want to embarrass him, mention his name, was having family trouble. And I learned about it 4 days before the hearing began. And I told him to go home. He said, "No." I said, "I'm going to fire if you don't go. Go home and take care of your family."
Yeah.
And so I have a rule everybody knows in my office. If you have any problem relating to family, you don't have to tell me what it is. Just look me in the eye and say, "I can't be. I got to take care of things."
I want to thank you for doing this today. I want to thank you for your compassion. The reason I'm so excited to talk to you was because I wanted to understand the tragedy in your life and how you dealt with it. And you're the kind of leader I love because we're lucky to have you in the Oval Office and serving as the father of the country. Because if you're a good father to your family, which you are, I know you'd be a good father to the country. And I want to thank you for providing a calming influence, an organized administration post-COVID, getting that vaccine out. I remember what the world was like at that point, getting NATO, getting us to feel comfortable, standing up to Putin. I could read your greatest hits, but I'm being given the high sign. But the incredible large growth in the jobs, unemployment rate down. I don't know what people are looking for in a president, or maybe it's that people don't feel like they're getting enough or something. I don't know what it is, but I'll give you your greatest hits. The lowest uninsured rate in history. 4 out of 5 Americans are covered for less than $10 a month. The knocking off a few ISIS leaders, cutting the emissions in half. I mean, you've always been an environmentalist. Geez, even the marijuana reform laws, enough with sitting there and fighting that battle. Respect for Marriage Act. What the hell is with people with this gay stuff? Who cares if someone's gay? I mean, how is it affecting anybody? People in love, it's good, right? Love is good.
My dad, we saw two men kissing one another in Rodney Square when I was going in to get a license. And I looked at him and he said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other.
That's it. That's how I look at it. Listen, this has been a thrill. You know, I put a suit on.
Everybody should. That's how everybody should act. I mean, whether it's anybody with the LGBT, whether you're straight, whatever. You kiss a person, they're in love. Leave it at that. What is it hurting you? Anyway, let's get this last little bit, and then I've got my final thoughts.
For you. And here's the depressing thing. This is from my daughter's wedding a year ago, last summer, and now I don't fit into it. My belly is hanging over my belt.
Well, I tell you what.
What do I do?
You know who deserves credit? The American people are relentless. The American people are stepping up. Who they vote for, they just never give up. We're the most unique country in the world. We really are.
We are, but I don't want to lose it.
We're not going to lose it, God willing.
Thank you for doing this.
Well, thanks for having me.
Mr. President. Look at me sitting with the president.
Look at me sitting with Howard Stern.
Wow. I mean, you can tell people this is the most important event in your lifetime.
I'll tell them that right away.
President Joe Biden. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Appreciate it.
Okay, my final thoughts. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on within the presidency. What most people don't understand is that the president is just a yes man. We vote him in to lead a country, to speak, but really all the power that he holds is a yes or a no. And then if it's a no, it gets thrown back down and it gets voted in anyway without or with his consent. Now, President Biden, just along with every other president, yes, they've had to deal with tragedy, so is everybody else. I mean, the simple thing is that this gives you more of a human view for the president that is sitting right now. No lies, no nothing. I mean, there's a couple of things I can't confirm, but for the majority, he spoke from the heart. He was awake, he was coherent, and stuff like that with this interview. I mean, sometimes you just got to give people a break because look at how old they are. And here's the thing. You're going for a person that is 4 years up underneath what President Biden is right now. So you're wanting 4 more years of an older person that is going to be just as bad or just as, how would you say it? Coherent, non-coherent, sleepy, whatever. You're going to have 4 more years of this if you vote somebody like Trump. I think there should be an upper age on how long you can serve, just like there's an upper age in the military, just like, I mean, just everything. I think the age is 40 in the military right now, but um, I mean, literally, there should be an upper age limit on everything, like there is. That a way you don't get people that you're probably going to have to use, you know, you're probably going to have to call a special session just to get, you know, a new president in. You know what I mean? And this president, yes, it's been good. But like I said in videos earlier, I think that I think Biden's time is up. I really do. And I'm not trying to be bad towards the guy. I'm not trying to be, you know, anything. I'm just calling it as it is. Like I said, I'm independent. I call things like it is. I can, you know, I think what they should do is run with Kamala Harris. I think she would be a really good president. Do I think every president's going to make the right choices? No. They're human. That's what makes it a job. But you don't want to destroy the country around you to do it. Well, anyway, I'm Trans Gamer Live, and you've been watching this VOD. This awesome VOD. And just remember, like, subscribe, follow me for all awesomeness. I release reaction videos once a week. This one is going to be one long reaction video because it's went on over 2 hours. But usually it's a music video or, you know, a compilation video of like different cartoons and or different shows, whatever. Follow, subscribe. Let's get us monetized on YouTube. Let's do that. Much love to each and every one of y'all. Thank y'all for viewing this. Whether you view 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or the whole thing, you are absolutely epic. And I will see you down the road. So peace, love, and chicken grease. We're out.